So I came to some conclusions regarding the primary focuses of my Deltarune theories. For those of you that don't know, my primary focus in theory making has been these two deltas. The hopeful delta, aka the player's delta. And the roaring delta, aka Gaster's delta. The roaring delta is an image of the unholy trinity, with Gaster taking the role of the anti-father, the roaring knight, presumably Des, taking the role of the anti-son, and the device friend taking the role of the anti-spirit. The hopeful delta, however, sort of has a choice which of the two trinities they will be an image bearer for. The player is not necessarily godly or satanic, the player is an entity with the choice to image one or the other. Whereas the devil plays with the world like a toy, the angel treats its followers as children who must not be toyed with. As such, the kindness root player will bear a metaphorical image of the Holy Trinity, and the weird root player will bear the image of the unholy Trinity. The hopeful delta consists of the player, the soul, and whomever will serve as the vessel of the players will by the end of the game. I have reason to believe it will switch from Chris to Noel towards the end of any route regardless, but the kindness ending will be through Noel's trust in the player, rather than the weird root speed runner glitch. That is a summary of what I've discussed so far, but I want to set aside the element of religious metaphor for a second and talk about the literal nature of the two deltas. And, the distinct possibility, that the roaring delta is in Undertale as well. Part 1, Friend inside my Undertale. This big Deltarune theory will feature snippets of other people's Deltarune theories. Now, I don't really keep track of who found which piece of the story, so it'll be hard to credit people properly. Just know, a lot of this is stuff I didn't find myself. There is a massive possibility that the device friend is in Undertale as well. We know Undertale has a Gaster, a royal scientist who fell into a creation of his to shatter across time and space. And now we seem to have evidence the sneaky cat has been in the background of this game the whole time. There is a secret room in the Undertale game files, one you can't access normally. You appear in a tall grass field in Waterfall, with the characters around you obscured and not visible. Several monsters are playing in this field, trying to catch bugs, and one of them mentions a friend that is following you. A creepy friend, with a wide smile. Now, this could be Flowey. However, if it was Flowey, why does this room have to be a separate game file? Something not part of the regular game. But the real piece of evidence I found was in regards to Muffet's employer. A mysterious someone who offered Muffet a lot of money for Frisk's soul. Now, the base narrative of Undertale gives you two main candidates for Muffet's employer. The first is Flowey, the smiley flower who wants to kill or be killed. And the second is Met-Atten, the robot trying to claim a human soul and ascend to the surface to be a star for humanity. But, neither of these candidates fits perfectly. Let me quote her words about the employer verbatim. The person who warned us about you offered us a lot of money for your soul. They had such a sweet smile and it's strange. I swear I saw them in the shadows, changing shape. She then goes on about how this money is going to reunite the spider clans and change the state of spider life as we know it. Something Muffet seems desperate to do, seeing the steep price difference between the ruined spiders and Hotland spiders. Now, let's apply these words to both Met-Atten and Flowey. Now, Met-Atten does have a smile, but this smile only exists in his X form. Otherwise, he doesn't have a face. The two forms of Met-Atten could go on to explain how he changes shape, but that's a little iffy. During his boss fight, Met-Atten X seems very excited about the debut of his new body, something he'd probably only publicly reveal on his show. He also calls it his debut, as if this is the first time he transformed into this new body. Why would he first reveal his new body to a random stranger he's just using to kill someone before anyone else? Also, lying about Frisk's opinion on spiders seems underhanded, even for someone like Met-Atten. Now, yes, he is the killer machine we all know and love, but his killer machine persona was played up a lot for the camera. We know deep down he's not a bad guy, he just wants to kill a kid to get what he wants. What I'm saying is, he is willing to kill, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to slander. Now, Flowey is much more malicious, and he is also known for his smile more so than Metatron. But he's not really known for changing shape. Yes, he does do a big ha 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 face after the ruins, but it seems more like cartoony exaggeration rather than that being his literal in-universe appearance. He also uses his photorealistic AHH roots towards the end of the game, but we only ever see these after he gets 6 human souls. Even in the pacifist route, he used the wholesome Wisa family now seen as his chance to break in and steal them. Also, it's not talked about a lot, Flowey has no reason to kill Frisk. Flowey needs Frisk, actually. Flowey needs Frisk to go to Ascari so he will bring out the human souls which, Flowey himself seems to not be able to find on his own. It also seems like Flowey was looking forward to the fight against you. If Flowey's goal is just to have fun playing a game, basically, I'd think he wouldn't be content to let Muffet have all the fun. Also, this one's a bit cheesy. This is almost definitely a coincidence. Muffet's dialogue before explaining the employer is, "Oh, how rude of me. I almost forgot to introduce you to my pet," whereas Device Friend seems to be portrayed as Gaster's pet. This leaves room for a mystery character, like Gaster, or Friend, to step in. Now, whereas Metatron is known for changing shape, and Flowey is known for his smile, Device Friend is known for both. He's like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. Sometimes he's the shape of Endogeny, a character known for his shifting appearance. Other times he's just a cat head who moves like a Pac-Man ghost. Other times he's just a smile. It seems like there was a possibility for him to be a wall barrier at some point as well. He also would almost definitely be able to follow you into cut game rooms, unlike Flowey. Flowey doesn't seem like the type to hoard a lot of money, and Metatron's probably rich enough, but he was able to get a lot of other mercenaries who were almost definitely cheaper than Muffet was. This leaves room for the smile without a cat to shift in with an ever-changing shape. But these leaves a question. If there is a Gaster in Undertale, another him. If there is a Friend in Undertale as well. Where is our Roaring Knight? Well, I have 2 ideas. The 2 characters most heavily associated with devil imagery in Undertale. Flowey and Chara. Now, I'm gonna say Chara, and I'll get to what I think Flowey is later. But first, let's talk about Deltarune's Roaring Knight. Part 2, Des the Human. I am firmly convinced Des is the Roaring Knight. The lost girl lured into the forest by Gaster's own tale of hell. But what if that is not the full story? Gaster needs an unholy trinity, right? And so, if there are 2 distinct persons of Des, Des's body and Des's soul. And Gaster already has a stand-in for a soul. Gaster needs the body. So, let's think about it this way. Let us think about one specific interpretation of death. At death, the soul and the body are separated. At death, the soul goes to heaven, and the body returns to the earth. It is buried beneath the earth, awaiting the day of resurrection. But what if, in Undertale, they take this one step further? The soul goes to heaven, and the body is claimed by hell. After all, the words grave and Sheol are synonyms, and when Sheol is translated, oftentimes, it is translated as hell. I have talked before about how the dark worlds themselves seem to parallel the idea of Sheol, more commonly referred to as limbo. The waiting place for all of the dead, the place of dust. The depths are even deeper, these would be hell, where Gaster and the Titans reside. What if Gaster takes Des's body, but the soul goes somewhere else for a different purpose? Essentially, this creates 2 Deses. 2 Deses with vastly different personalities. Her compassion is left with her soul, and her instinct, her sense of fun, are with her body. This would mean one thing, however. The Deltarune soul is not a monster soul, it is 100% a human soul. And this makes sense. Dessa's shoes in her room are not designed for hooved feet. They are wide, they have the big cartoony bump on the end. These are woefully impractical for hooved monsters probably wouldn't need shoes at all. And this explains Dessa's emotional connection to Chris, the two humans who grew up in the monster world. One with a headband that looks like goat horns, and the other with a headband that looks like deer antlers. This would also allow the roaring Delta to be a human, a monster, and a Darner. Gaster the monster, Friend the Darner, and Des the human. This would go on to explain Dessa's fear, her attempt to reach out, to get someone to hear her. The Des who sees nothing, has no eyes, only feeling. This is our, unfortunately, overlooked character of the soul. The soul is just as much of a character as Chris is. If we are meant to be shocked when it turns out the human we play as is distinct from ourselves, is it possible we will have the same level of shock if we find out our soul is distinct as well? And so, Gaster, in his mad quest to play God. Gaster separates the soul from the body, and gives the soul to us. Now, I have a little more evidence that this could be the case, but in order to show you that, I need to move over to Undertale again. Part 3, Chara and the Soul. Now, if this is my claim. One human is separated, her body becomes a devil, and her soul becomes an angel. What evidence do I have for this? Undertale. The debate of Undertale, what does Chara represent? Well, two completely separate concepts. An entity whose body and soul were separated, and sent out for two different purposes. Hell takes the body, and heaven receives the soul. This explains why there's so much evidence for Chara being the soul, but also why Chara asks for the soul at the end of the genocide route. It's cause her body is the one who can see, and her soul is the one who could feel. I had my own theory about Chara. I compared her to Gaster, this creepy metademon in control of a lot of the game's elements. So the body stays with Gaster as an adopted child, carrying out his will as he sees fit. The soul goes to us, the angel, another important piece of this prophecy to shatter the barrier. Now, what is Chara's nature? Simple, the nature of a child. Chara is not all good or evil, she's like most people, she's both. Compassion is stored in the soul, and the body carries the instinct. That doesn't, however, mean compassion is always exercised correctly. For example, when Asriel carried Chara's soul up to the surface and Chara's soul told him to kill the humans, it was in compassion for monster kind. It was compassion for one people and wrath against another. But her instinct, her body, is incapable of showing love for monster kind. It has no compassion. Perhaps it's like a diagnosed psychopath, but those diagnosed with psychopathy still have the potential to be a good person. Hence why Chris does selfless acts, but Chris does so without emotion in it. And so the darkness that leaks out of her face at the end of the genocide route, this could be a friend inside her, a dark friend. Still, Chara is the future of humans and monsters. Still a flawed protagonist, but perhaps the end of a pacifist route provides a redemption arc for, at the very least, the soul. I feel like this comparison between the two games, the body goes to hell and the soul goes to heaven. These two ideas, in tandem, provide evidence for each other. Part 4, the chart. So now let me show you this chart, which sort of summarizes what I think is happening. In Undertale, we play as Frisk's body and Chara's soul. Both of which seem to develop a personality based on our own actions as we play. They are both young, impressionable, they're like babies by this point in the story. And we, much like a father, have a moral obligation to provide a good example for them. Dessa's soul and Chris's instinct, on the other hand, are both young teens. In their rebellious phase. A phase which is good when your parents are not to be trusted, as we see in the weird root. But a phase which may drive division in the event of a good parent trying their best to be what their child needs. And so we try to connect with someone who won't talk to us, try to give them what they need despite the communication barrier. We have to respect their autonomy, while also trying our best to keep them safe. I am not a father myself, so I don't know where that balance is met. But I bet one of the best things to do at this stage in life is let our kids be themselves, express themselves, which is admittedly hard in a situation like this. Gaster, on the other hand, does not meet this necessary balance of freedom and control. Perhaps he gives too much freedom to the friend, and too much control over the night. Allowing the friend to manipulate and deceive other people for the sake of playing a game, and forcing his desires for the future onto his daughter. It's like a parent who doesn't pay enough attention to his pet, but forces his daughter to follow in his line of work. One of the biggest tragedies here is that the separation between compassion and instinct, to the extent these children essentially become two different people. This makes it woefully hard for all of these children to be themselves. Maybe at the end of the genocide route, Chara was trying to get her soul back, but she took over Frisk in the process. Maybe Device Friend was trying to get back Chara's soul for Gaster's quest to break the barrier, maybe it was for Chara's completion. Who knows? Either way, Frisk becomes a victim, the ends do not justify the means. But it doesn't seem like the nature of this universe limits us to one body. Let's talk about the other characters' roles in this story. Part 5, Bodies. This is the simplest idea of what I think's going on in regards to Undertale's hopeful delta. Now, it could be more complicated than this. The hopeful delta is not limited to Chara's soul, nor is it limited to Frisk's body. I think something more complicated is going on here. I just left the only soul in this situation as Chara's soul for now, but there is a huge possibility the other 6 human souls are part of this as well. So the first body would be Asriel when he crossed the barrier to find 7 human souls. He and Chara went together, presumably with no player guiding them at this time, and it led to Asriel's death. There was strife between Asriel and Chara's desires, in which I would say Asriel was in the right, and then Asriel died. What happened to Chara's soul afterwards is unknown, but there is a high probability it was with the 6 humans every time they fell down. The next bodies would be the 6 humans themselves who fell down. Then we have Flowey. This is what I believe Flowey's role is in Undertale, he is the 8th body. Now, here's the thing. I do not know if Flowey was on the side of Hopeful Delta or if he was on the side of Roaring Delta. Admittedly, the Undertale Deltas should have different names. Suggest them in the comments. I'll still call them Roaring and Hopeful for now. If Flowey was the one in control of save states before, it would make sense if he was carrying around Chara's soul for a while, something we know is tied to save states. I am skeptical of that. A big part of Flowey's character is his lack of soul, and therefore, lack of compassion. So I am more inclined to believe he was one of Gaster's bodies beforehand. I just have him here cause, the big thing with Gaster is that we only really have 2 candidates for his Undertale body, unless Muffet technically counts cause of her Undertale secret boss status. Either way, I think Flowey's role is definitely a body status as well as Chara's body is. It is important to note the Hopeful Delta is the much more neutral status of angel rather than God himself. You really have the choice between good and evil in regards to the game's story, and Flowey and Chara both had this choice as well. I will say there was no player status over the Hopeful Delta until the events of Undertale happen, although technically there is a reality where that was Toby Fox. I don't really say that, the dog seems to play a chaotic neutral comic relief role in this story as opposed to a big mover of plot events. And how Chara's soul ended up in Frisk, where Frisk's actual soul is, these are all things that are beyond me to understand. Frisk could have spawned into existence ex nihilo, we might be playing as a newborn. And this leads us into Deltarune, where this idea of separate bodies is gonna play a much more pivotal role. We were going to create a vessel of our own, but then it was destroyed, and now we go to Chris, a character who likely played the role of body before us. Chris had their own save file, one we overwrite as soon as we take control. Many players are hoping for Chris's autonomy to return by the end of the normal route. A lot of players aren't malicious. Some are ignorant of Chris's suffering, and others like me don't think Chris's suffering will be solved by abandoning them to survive Gaster's whims on their own. I do believe Noelle will be our vessel in the future of every route, but I do think Weird Route and Normal Route have one big difference. Weird Route is forceful, and it also seems to be a commentary on speedrunners' glitches. You can get a secret item early and use it to take control over Noelle. Normal Route seems like it leans into the idea of love, asking your children what they want and writing that into your own prophecy to combat Gaster's intended outcome for the world. Noelle already trusts the idea of the angel, and if that turns out to be you, a lot of religions do have a concept of the divine being living inside of them, whilst maintaining their free will, their comfort, and this allows them to move forward with confidence that they can change the world into something better. Noelle is the church girl who already trusts the angel, and would likely trust a compassionate entity to reside within her if she spent enough time with this entity to trust them. This is kind of why I'm expecting Chapter 5 to be about Noelle rather than Susie. I think we need way more Noelle character development by the end of the game. Now, this leads us to the big question. If it is possible for the player to have several choices in regards to bodies, perhaps it is possible for Gaster to have many bodies as well. Jevil, the Chaos King, Spamton, the Killer Queen, Iram, Tenna, we know he would not have been able to get Jerson. Who knows, perhaps Friend Inside Me was a reference to Spamton all along. It is entirely possible for Gaster to seek a new vessel, someone like Chris or Susie before the end of the game. Seek someone to be the true Roaring Knight by the end. Who knows? But, while we're on the topic of Gaster, I want to discuss one thing. The Egg Giver. I have changed my mind drastically on the Egg Giver since I started these theories, understandably so. As of now, we do not have much to go on. We don't even know which of the two Eden trees this one was meant to invoke the vibes of. I went from thinking it was Grandpa Semi, and that he could have been recontextualized as a self-insert of Toby Fox. I change my stance on that. If Toby is gonna make any scrapped character a secret second self-insert, it almost definitely be the Radiation Fox. Some theorize to be Friend, but this seems strange in regards to the repeated phrase man device friend is many things, but we've never really seen him be a man. But I had an idea. This whole theory was about the body and soul being separated, and becoming two decidedly different characters. Des is split into a roaring body and a hopeful soul, and so does Chara. Perhaps Gaster was split as well, split into contrasting entities. One side is his instinct, and the other is his soul. Device Friend, despite seemingly taking the role of Gaster's soul, is almost definitely not Gaster's actual soul. Device Friend is a device, a creation of the Doctor. So perhaps the Dungeon Master, Gaster. Perhaps he is one side of the man, and the man behind the tree is another half he cast away from himself, until that part of him became forgotten. So, which one is the soul, and which is the body? I tend to think that our main antagonist is Gaster's body, his instinct. Whereas the much more expressive and emotional Egg Giver seems to be a source of compassion, a lost soul. However, it might still bear the appearance of a man. I do think Gaster rejects his soul, his compassion, instead choosing to use this device as his method of influence. This doesn't make it clear if finding the man behind the tree is a good thing or a bad thing, or which of the two trees the secret tree is really meant to represent. Now all of this leaves us with an uncomfortable question, one I don't know if I'll be able to answer. If we know where Des and Chara's bodies and souls went, if I took a complete shot in the dark and found the location of Gaster's soul, where are the souls of Frisk and Chris? This is a question I do not think we have any way to figure out. There is a chance Frisk has two souls, one red and another we've never seen the color for. But we have no earthly idea where Chris's real soul is. And this is a question I hope will be answered by the end of the game.